Well, good morning, everybody. Grace and peace to you from our Lord Jesus Christ and all the saints here in rainy Central California. Been raining the past couple of days, and we can sure use that rain. I'm coming to you this week to, I guess you could say, confess my sins. We had a we had a little incident yesterday that should have been smooth and flawless because the past two or three times I've done this and it's been in the last few years. I've only done it two or three times. Um, it's gone flawless. That's because I planned it out carefully. It was before hours or outside of, office hours. And oops, gotta quit touching the table. And nobody's around, so of course it went perfectly. Now I got a little overly confident, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to teach my new he's not a sidekick, he's an apprentice, I guess you could call him. Um, Tariq, teach Tariq, this is how we add a switch to a stack. Now, what do I mean by that? Let me share my screen and give you a little uh, perspective. I'm going to share. Where's the whole? There it is. So I'm going to share my whole desktop here. Pardon me while I scratch an itch on my nose. So this is kind of how our switches are set up. We have a switch with some uplinks that go back to the core. And in this case, it was our graduate medical education area. So it's basically where all the teacher doctors are and all this, it's kind of like their administrative area. And they needed another machine added. I forget, it's another PC, another phone, something like that. But we were all out of ports on the existing switch. There's only one switch there, one 48 port switch. So just picture this without these other switches hanging off the bottom, just one switch here at the top and connected back into our cores, all out of ports. So, I mean, in that situation, you could add another switch and another set of uplinks and assign another IP address, and now you've got two switches to manage over there. Or you can do what we call stacking. You can stack the switch with the existing one, and it'll make it one logical switch with basically two slots in it, two slots of 48 ports. And they're just easier to manage that way, easier to keep track of. And, if you're updating firmware, you're only updating firmware on one device rather than on two devices. So I like stacking switches. It's just a preference, and I save on uplinks that way too. So in Extreme's case, they've got these stacking cables that you can stack the two switches. And you stack them basically just like you see here. There's four here. In the case of yesterday, we were only doing two. So this cable right here, it's going down to the bottom. First of all, it's only two stacks, so we'll stop there. And this cable here would just plug in right here, right there. Um, so you basically have like a cross connect. Port two to port one, port two up here to port one. So there you go. We're gonna connect these two switches, cable them in. And then once you do that, just clean up here a little bit. Once you do that, I generally will take this second uplink and move it to the bottom switch in the stack. So remember, we're not using these switches here. We've only got a stack of two. And I would do that normally because, if this switch just completely dies, these people uh, won't lose their network connection because it'll take over so there's a master and backups and standbys and all kinds of roles in the stack. Well, three roles in the stack, master and a backup. So normally, um, this guy, let's do this. Normally, the way it would work is this guy would be the master, and this guy would be, I think it's called a standby. And so, you lose one switch, master dies, standby takes over. Standby dies, well, the master's still the master. He's going to keep doing what he does. Okay, that's the theory. This is what we were trying to accomplish. Now, how did it go? Well, let's get over here to my notes from yesterday. So here's basically the procedure I would follow. This came straight from well, I wouldn't say straight from Extreme's website, straight from my notes on Extreme's procedure on how to do it. So you get a brand new fresh switch, you power it up, um, you issue an enable stacking command, and once you do that, you do show stacking. Make sure it's there, knows it's a stack. Yep, it's an active stack. Its role is master. And the reason you have to do this show stacking command is because you need this MAC address right here. That's the MAC address for that slot of the stack. So, and then you'd say, okay, I want to configure stacking node address for whatever that is there. And this one's going to be slot number whatever. So it'd be, if you had a stack of 3, it would be slot number 4, just like I have here. If you have a stack of 2, then you would tell it, okay, I want you to configure this one as slot number 2. And the reason we do that is, once it powers up, it's going to negotiate with the existing stack that's there. And we want it to be the next guy in line and not try to take over as the master, right? And then since there's only 2, I also want this guy to be a master if something goes wrong with the other one. So I said, hey, either one of these can be a master, okay? Um, okay. So once you do that, you save the new mode, save the config on the node and reboot it. And on the existing, after it reboots, on the existing one, you tell it, hey, synchronize with this guy. Sorry, that's I copied and pasted the actual switch I was doing, but basically this would be the same MAC address that you just got up here. So you would use the same MAC address as shown here. And same thing, once it had come up, you would reboot that node with this address, not this one. You would tell the master, hey, reboot that node. And you just be patient and wait. It can take up to like 15 minutes. So, okay, so that's kind of what we did. So we went through this whole thing on the stack. So here we go. This is the actual log files from yesterday at 1:30-ish. So here it is, it's booting up. You go through this first time startup, it asks you a bunch of questions. Do you want it? So this is a universal switch. So you can either run VOS and have it, actively participate in Fabric, or you can just leave it as XOS. And I just leave them as XOS. Ask you a few other questions about all this stuff. I just accept the defaults to everything. So once you get it up, it says, okay, change your admin password. That's how you know you're pretty much ready to go. And then you'll get the prompt. So it said show stacking. Stack state was disabled. That's what I would expect. So showing stacking support. It does have stacking support. So, and auto discovery is enabled, but you need to actually enable stacking. So I issue the command right here, enable stacking. Whoops, don't do that. Enable stacking. And do you want to do an easy setup? No, just enable stacking. So you need to reboot the switch for that thing to, actually understand that it can be a stack. So we did that. Well, we didn't reboot it yet. So we got to go through and do the command where I said, hey, let this thing know that it's actually going to be slot number 2. So we did that there. And then we said, hey, make sure this guy can be a master if need be. Okay, we did that. So everything looked pretty good, pretty normal. And remember, this is on the switch that we're adding. This is the blank switch that's going to be added to the existing switch out there and become, slot number 2 of the new stack. So we save the configuration, and then at this point, we just pulled the power after the config was saved so that we could do a hard reboot. It wasn't real easy to do either because this was in a really tight cabinet. And poor Tariq, he's a big guy, but he was the only one tall enough to reach the power cables. I would have fit in the space better, but I couldn't reach. So he was, Tariq was doing his best to be a contortionist. Thank you, Tariq. If you ever watch this, thank you. So we pulled the power and replaced it. And, here it goes. It's going through its startup. All kinds of things to do. Goes through startup, goes through startup. Lots of information that I'm not going to go through because I don't understand half of it myself. Um, so now here we get it's starting up. We see pending AAA login. You see that on all Extreme switches. It's getting ready to start the login service. And then once you see this, you can now log in. So now here's where this is where I should have first noticed that something was not quite right. But I didn't notice it because I'm busy talking to Tariq, and we're talking about the what we're doing there, things we're going to do next week, just idle chit chat. So I finally log in and I'm getting ready to check things out. And here is when I finally notice, okay, something is wrong, but I'm not quite sure what it is yet. So I looked at it. Topology is a ring. That's what I expected. We got a cable to go to one and a cable to go back to the other. If we'd only put one cable on, it would have said topology is a daisy chain. Since we put 2 cables on, we cross-connected them, it's a ring. That's what you want on the stacks. Here's what I didn't notice. So slot 1, this is the existing switch that was already there, this guy. This is the existing switch. This is what we're trying to add to it, or we're trying to add the second switch to this. It showed up as slot 1, which I noticed. I thought, okay, well, slot 1, but it should have been first in the list, and it wasn't. Something in the back of my brain told me to ignore it because its MAC address is the newer switch had a lower MAC address. Or did it? No, it didn't. So this guy should have been the master because it has a lower MAC address. No, it is higher. So this one is lower. D6 is lower than D7. So that wouldn't have tipped me off anyway. I'm just looking at it now. But this is what should have tipped me off is why isn't this number 1 in the list? And then the big tip would be this right here. The role is none. It should say master, what does it say? Does it say standby or I think it should say master capable or backup or something. It shouldn't say none, in other words. So we were still talking, and at this point I hear I see a whole bunch. I didn't hear it yet. I saw a whole bunch of text start flying by on the monitor. We got the console cable plugged into switch number 2, and then I start seeing all this stuff. This one right here, and that's when my heart sunk. Transferring inactive partition. Why are you transferring a partition? And then my brain started rationalizing it. Well, of course, it's got to transfer the configuration from the existing switch to the new switch. Okay, yeah. And then it started doing all that. It's transferring partition information. And Rebooting to master switch configuration. That's when my heart sunk because it didn't reboot. The existing switch rebooted. And that's when I thought, oh crap, that shouldn't have happened. And then I thought, well, it knows it's configured. Maybe it'll write the configuration over to the new switch. That was my hope. And that's when we see the ladies start going. We can hear them. We're in a little like copy machine room, basically, and they're out in this office area. And that's where we hear them. Hey, are you on the network anymore? Is your phone working? And oh man, my heart just sunk. I said, Tariq, can you go out there and look at one of those computers? He went out and looked at one of the computers. He goes, oh yeah, they're all offline. Oh man, not good. I said, all right, let's let this finish and then see what we got. So here it is. It's going through its whole booting process. And then it starts downloading firmware and downloading firmware forever. Then it's starting the new firmware. And then it finally completed. I thought that shouldn't have happened. So I logged in and we moved at this point you can't see it, it doesn't say it here. We tried to move the console port up to the other switch, and it told me, no, you're on node number 2. This has to be done from the master. This is the original switch that was supposed to be the master. So, okay, put it back, puts it back. And yeah, and the only thing that would work is no, that's right. We had moved it over to uh, now I'm getting confused. How did we get there? Basically, we had to connect to the replacement switch and then telnet to it. Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. My coffee's running out. We t This is going to make for some great YouTube material, right? Oh yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. No, he doesn't. Um, so we telnet it over to the switch, and because you can telnet to different slot numbers in the stack, and I did a show config, and it wasn't good. I did the show config. There was nothing there. See all these blank spaces between these different comment lines? These are basically just comments to tell you what portion of the config you're in. Node alias, I know I've got node alias configurations. Where's the other one that was the big tip off? Uh, Maybe it's farther down. Oh yeah, SNMP. No, that's not who I have as my SNMP contact. VLAN configuration. Where are all the VLANs? They were gone. Oh man. So I got through and I looked at all the config and it was all gone. So what did I do? Every night, uh, we have a software program called XIQ Site Edition. Used to be called NetSite. And luckily, what this thing does every night is back up the switch configs. Now, normally what you can do is just put the IP address, just configure, you put a new switch in, configure up the IP address, set up SNMP v3, and you can just blow the configuration right back into it. Can't do that in this case because we've added another node to the stack of switches where it was just a single switch before, the port numbers change. So instead of just going port 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like it was in the old switch, you have to tell it what slot number as in addition. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 could be either on slot 1 or slot 2. So you say 1:1, 1:2, or 2:1, 2:2 to address the ports. So you can't just blow it back in there. So what did I have to do? Right what I started doing. I started copying and pasting, and in some cases typing, the IP address of the switch. Now, normally what you can do is just put the IP address, just configure, you put a new switch in, configure up the IP address, set up SNMP v3, and you can just blow the configuration right back into it. Can't do that in this case because the config commands all over again. So I had to put the VLANs back in. I had to for Fabric, I had to add the NSIs for the VLANs. I had to add all the LLDP statements again, and all the LLDP statements that help the phones to work and find their VLANs and make sure they're getting the right amount of power on each port, so that the phone sidecars would work. And yeah, so once it got booted up, um, yeah, then I saw that the new one, the new switch was the master and the old switch was the standby. No bueno. So anyway, after a whole lot of command typing, we finally got everything back up. So what was the root cause? Well, the root cause was not checking the original switch and not realizing that it didn't have stacking enabled. When I didn't install this switch, we had professional services come out and install the switch because we had like, I don't know, 20 or 30 of them to install. So we just contracted professional services as part of the switch purchase to say, okay, when we buy these switches from you, we want you to install them too. I'll give you, the template and, the new IP address for each switch and all that. And then you set them up and I'll come back through and, double check everything. And they would use the existing switch as a template to, what ports, what VLANs and all that. We were upgrading from C5 switches to these 5520s. So so they did that and largely it worked. But one thing they didn't do is if there was a single switch, they didn't enable stacking support on it. So that's something I have to keep in the back of my mind, or I may just look for all my single switches and make sure stacking support is enabled on them. Maybe I'll give that as a task for Tariq to do so he can learn network stuff. So yeah, that's why stacking was never enabled on that switch. And I didn't check it. So I'm going to stop my share here real quick so I can see my face. You can see my face real big. So there you go. Lesson learned. Be sure and double check everything. I'm going to double check next time. So anyway, that was kind of a long explanation. It's kind of a long video. If to those of you who stuck till the end, thank you. God bless you. If you're still awake, thank you. God bless you. And yeah, we'll hopefully come to you next week. What's coming up next week is we're going to be spending the first couple of days. I'm not going to put any info here. I could put something in the comments, but if you want to Google Da Vinci surgical robot, something like that, we're going to be assisting the vendor to install these surgical robots. We've already got one. I got to quit touching the table. We've got one already. We're going to move it out, move it into another OR, and then put the new one in where the existing one is. And new and improved. And yeah, I don't know what's new and improved about it, but the doctors like it. So we're going to put one of those in there. And that's largely the task for next week. And the week after that is Christmas, so we won't be doing anything. If I make a video, it'll just be talking, much like this one was, but at least I had a little bit of show and tell. So anyway, that's all I got for this week, guys. If you like what you saw, click the subscribe button, click the notification bell. Keep those comments coming, questions. You got questions? I might have answers. Can't guarantee I will. And remember, this isn't really a how-to. This is a how I did it. Yeah, there's probably better ways. There are definitely better ways. But remember, this channel isn't really a channel on how to do things. This is just a channel mostly for folks that wonder what a network admin does. And I don't know what they all do, what others, I don't know. If you're a network admin, I don't know what you may be doing. But I am a network admin, and this is what I do. So God bless, guys. We'll see you next week. How do you stop this crazy?